Roger Stone here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history. That's actual physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or you're retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone right now for your free Roger Stone Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit. Or call 800-747-6589. That's 800-747-6589. Call now to receive your free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.
Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby.
Well, if the phone rang in the White House at 3 o'clock in the morning, whom do you trust to answer it? Is Kamala Harris capable of making the right decision? Well, in the studio with us, we have Judge Richard Weinberg, we have Ed Cox, so we have one Democrat, one Republican, and me and Rita. So, gentlemen, what do you think?
My opinion, I think you ought to take into account the history that Harris was the last person in the room with President Biden when he determined, against all advice, the disastrous decision to get out of Afghanistan right away for purely political purposes.
And that ruined how many women? 20 million, 30 million women have to live in slavery in Afghanistan, and none of the women out there that respect women are saying anything about it.
No, that's a great point, John.
And a great airfield.
Judge Weinberg, anything?
Lost.
Yeah, Bagram.
I think it would be a terrible mistake to have Harris being the person answering the phone at the White House.
Of making a decision.
The only one who's proven that he knows what to do in such a situation is Donald Trump.
And you know what, John, I actually think it's a very important question. Given all the things that are going on in the world right now, it's actually a very realistic, critical question that the world, all of us need to think about.
A possible million people listening to us right now to answer that question amongst themselves. Don't let me give you an answer. You know what the answer is. And I watched a movie on Sunday afternoon. It was a PBS movie about the fall of Constantinople, the most powerful city, the most powerful empire in the 12th, 13th, 14th century. Guess what? I see the similarities of what they're trying to do to the United States of America. It's the PBS movie, a 1-hour movie, made in 2018, The Fall of Constantinople. If anybody hasn't seen it, please see it when you can. And it is very sad, and you'll see the similarities yourself. Rita, what else is going on?
Well, we have the debate, of course, and I'm sure that foreign policy, national security, border, economy, there are so many huge issues. Ed Cox, you saw the new poll. This is interesting. There's a new poll that just came out, John, and it's a New York Times Siena poll. Which isn't necessarily favorable to
Siena,
Trump.
Tilts toward the Democrats.
Yeah, exactly.
Always.
And New York Times, I think we know which way that one
poll,
goes. It is.
Yep.
And what's key, Ed, is that it is now the new numbers are 48 Trump, 47 Kamala Harris. What's important
I don't believe those. I don't believe those numbers.
Who knows? But what is interesting, John, we are seeing a trend in a lot of polls that are showing that it's almost going back to the numbers of the end of July, like the sort of honeymoon is over, if you will, Judge.
The honeymoon is over and reality is setting in.
Yeah, and people are saying, who do I want to answer that 3 a.m. call?
Somebody has said that the numbers are starting to go against Harris. But I said that already. I said July belonged to the Republicans, August belonged to the Democrats, and September how do you say it in Great Britain? Sorting things out.
Yeah, you always said after Labor Day, and you're spot on. Here it is. And look, the debate, I think, is going to be pivotal. Don't you think?
And what I said, I was on Sid's show this morning, and what I said is they are training her to give 10 answers. No matter what the questions are, my opinion, she's going to read out in her mind those 10 answers, and she doesn't care what the questions are.
Do you know what?
She's just going to answer that the same way.
It's called staying on the narrative.
Can I say my prediction? I think she'll have like 6 or 8 answers that she'll got to keep going back to. Ed Cox?
Yeah, but people are looking for substance. Put aside the debate. Let's say it's a draw. They both talk. They both prove they can talk, stand on their feet and talk. But people know that Trump's got a solid record of achievement in his 4 years as president, and people are looking for substance. She has given no substance yet.
And the other thing is, did you see the pictures of the new? Maybe we'll ask the general about it. All the bullets being created and the rockets being created to send to the Ukraine. And one more thing, we got to make sure our country survives. Why don't you bring in the general?
Absolutely. And we have with us now Brigadier General Blaine Holt, of course, worked with NATO and also a C-17 commander there in the Air Force. General Blaine Holt, this is a really important question. We are on the verge, I feel like, as we're heading into 9/11, you think about open borders. I'm concerned about another terrorist attack. How concerned are you, given the fact that we have all of these things going on around the globe, all these hot spots, and we just talked about that 3 a.m. call.
And an open border.
And a wide open border.
Yeah, so thanks for pulling me into the conversation because it's a very good one to have. It's great to be with you. What I will say is something that might sound hyperbolic or bombastic, but then, of course, I'll defend it in any way you want me to. And that is, in our country's history, in our nation's history, our people have never been in more danger than they are right now. Right now. And that you can see now starting to play out with this open border, that the borders are left wide open for millions of fighting age men to be here. Well, they're activating now. We've talked about this on this show before. Aurora, Colorado, multiple apartment complexes taken. The Permian Basin, oil fields where they say you can't come onto your oil field. We are taking this. A state after state after state. And now in New York City, bum rushing grocery stores and taking every single thing they have. People should not listen to any outlet that tells them this is just crime. No. These are the early hours of terrorism, and the spirals only go up from here. Meanwhile, our military is deployed overseas, and to the judge's point, we are manufacturing shells and ammunition hand over fist, not for our stores, but for somebody else's war. So we keep weakening the United States. We keep our forces overseas when really what we need is our forces home. Things have changed. We've got problems right here.
You know, General Blaine Holt, to your point, there was this big story that John and I and all of us were talking about earlier about the military-industrial complex. And you should see, it's like they're producing, it's like for like a whole, like a country fighting. I mean, it's frightening.
General, my opinion is Ukraine has 3 chances, or at least 2, slim and none. I mean, why are we sending them all these bullets and rockets for them to kill each other?
Well, because, and here's the sick part. The sick part is Ukraine is losing the war. The problem is you have these academics in the White House that, the most service they've ever seen is playing with toy soldiers in their offices, to be quite blunt. And they bypass quite competent planning offered from the Pentagon. And they decide they're going to micromanage it themselves. So what did we have here? We started with a deterrable war that didn't have to happen in Ukraine. Then we got to a peace table that Boris Johnson and others disrupted. We get into this war with no strategy. We throw weapons and money at it, nothing else. The war goes to a disastrous place, quite predictable. And now we find ourselves depleting our own readiness and our own stocks. And nobody in this national security team held to account yet. But the realities on the ground are the troops that went to Kursk are being encircled as we speak. They're breaking through the lines. And we need to get this war to some sort of reasonable off-ramp because the stakes only get more dangerous from here, especially if the Russians in Russia decide that Vladimir Putin needs to take the gloves off and end the war.
Ed Cox.
So how does the end game work, General? How do you see it? And what's the military side of it? Because let's say a new president comes in, what should he do?
So I think your levers right now, and they are far less than where they were when this war started in 2022. We certainly were in much better shape back in 2014. But you have today to deal with, not the past. And so where I think your very best effort, if I was a strategist advising right now, I would say, look, you still have deterrence available in NATO. We still have the NATO frontier that we can work. Vladimir Putin doesn't want to see Finland grow stronger now that they're a new member, or Sweden for that matter. He doesn't want to see basing of the American flavor come right up on with what's happening in Romania right now. It's already happening at Constanta. So your leverage is, look, we're going to come closer to Russia, not further away. You're going to do more poorly around the world as we start to work you economically in other directions. But what we're going to have to do is, instead of going to that place, how about we find an amicable solution here in Ukraine? You don't want to be in Ukraine proper where Ukrainian is spoken because you're going to be fighting an insurgency for the next 50 years. So,
I mean, and the Ukrainians and the Russians are almost first cousins. Why,
that's exactly right.
I mean, why can't we just settle this thing? Because the Russia is never going to pull back. I mean,
four elements to any war. There's four elements to any war. You've got money, weapons, diplomacy, and strategy. Well, guess what? We only put two of the ingredients into the cocktail. We put money and weapons. No strategy, no diplomacy.
Don't forget the politics, General, because there's politics here.
I would never
and
forget
politics
that.
in Moscow also.
I got you.
Yep.
But the politics on this side are saving face at this point, which is very sick because we're almost over 1 million people killed in this war. So what we should do now, and I'm sorry about the politics over here, what we should be doing now, understanding that there is a nuclear threat in Russia, reassociating ourselves with that, is looking to find the off-ramp to this war. That's the right answer morally. That's the right answer for our own security, not just here at home, but for the globe, because Russia's only got two speeds. They've got Neanderthal speed, which you see with their army conventionally, and then they've got advanced Star Wars speed with hypersonic Kinzhal missiles and Poseidon nuclear weapons that could rock the United States coastline. So we should understand what that threat is, understand what our levers are, and start to
General,
work
we're almost out of time. I got one last question. You were at NATO, all right? Yes. Now, very important question. I mean, I asked Admiral Stavridis this the other day. Why aren't we, he's a good friend, why aren't we taking back the Red Sea? I mean, I don't understand this. Where the heck are we?
You and I are in the same bucket. We project American weakness this way. We have no business setting a stage where the United States Navy looks like a pier to a ragtag bunch of terrorists called the Houthis. That is dangerous. It's dangerous for what the world sees that we're doing. We have capabilities that are well beyond that, and we shouldn't be doing this. And so I don't know what my dear boss, who I deeply respect, said, but I
love him dearly.
This is not where we should be with U.S. naval forces.
I agree. Thank you for coming on. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Me too. You all take care. Thanks for involving me.
Thank you, General.
And right now we have an interview with Michael Goodwin of the New York Post that's taking the New York Times to task on telling the truth. And that, all the news that's fit to print, well, the New York Times, well, is it printing all the news? Let's go to Michael Goodwin.
Yep. And joining us now is Michael Goodwin. He's calling in right now.
With us today is the Pulitzer-winning columnist of the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, and he's always got something really, really important to report to us. Oh, Michael Goodwin, the world's coming to an end, in my opinion, unless we turn it around. Where are we?
Oh, well, thank you, John. I agree. We're deeper in the weeds than I think a lot of people realize. The protests, the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protests, have now become normalized. We see them so often, the flags over the bridges, the graffiti, fighting with cops, blocking traffic, etc. We see these things so often in New York and elsewhere on college campuses, of course, that we begin to say, well, yeah, there they go again. And that's a sign of acceptance, that we have come to believe that these things are routine, maybe even normal, that this is what kids do or this is what some people believe. This is anti-Semitism. We cannot normalize anti-Semitism. We cannot accept that as something that just happens and some people believe that. No, that's out of bounds. And I think we have to say it more loudly and more often. And I think the government leaders in particular have been silent. You think about, when is the last time Kathy Hochul or Eric Adams condemned anti-Semitism or any of these campus riots or any of this graffiti? Or where are they? Why? I mean, have they accepted it as inevitable and therefore it's politically a dead ender for them to criticize it?
I will give you my opinion on Kathy Hochul and whoever else. They are scared to do it because they are scared from repercussions from whoever is running the White House right now.
Well, and I think they're also, because they're Democrats, there's no question that these are not even potential Republican voters doing these things. These are Democrats ultimately, or they don't vote at all, or they vote for some wacky other party. But they are leftist, and Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams need to appeal to the left wing of their party. And so I believe they're intimidated by the politics of these despicable demonstrations and protests. I mean, how can they accept this in the city and the state? It's not normal, and it really does. When people say, this is how it started in Germany in the 30s. I used to think that was an overstatement. I'm now starting to think they might be right. This does have a feeling of permanence about it, and the vehemence. It's not affected by even, say, when the hostages are murdered and tortured. It's not affected. That they don't take a break and say, okay, let's let things calm down. They come out the next day supporting Hamas with their keffiyehs and sometimes their Hezbollah headbands and the Palestinian flags. So they're not deterred by the brutality and the terrorism. In fact, they're fine with it. That's really scary.
Michael Goodwin, you wrote a column about the New York Times. And I knew a lot of the New York Times owners in the past, and the people that wrote it, and they were decent people, but things have changed over there.
Yeah, John, journalistically, I grew up there. I got a job there right out of college as a clerk, and eventually worked my way on to the reporting staff, and I learned a tremendous amount of things there. In terms of fairness, people say, oh, you have to be objective. At the New York Times, I learned, no, not objective, because we don't really believe anybody can be objective, but you can be fair. And there's ways to measure fairness in your stories, whether you've accurately portrayed the two sides of an argument, whether you've given both sides a chance, an equal chance to comment, to explain. But what's happened now, and it started during Donald Trump's first run for the White House, the Times took away the guardrails. It doesn't exist anymore. Now you are essentially free to give your opinion every day. And so you read the New York Times, and every story is an opinion, whether it's culture, theater, sports, business, book reviews, and of course, politics, climate change, race, gender, all of these things are radicalized in the New York Times. And so the subject, that's the backdrop to the column that you mentioned. It was the publisher of the New York Times, Arthur Gregg Sulzberger, the fifth male of his family to run the New York Times. It's an inherited position to be publisher. It's a public company, but not really. And so he's written this op-ed, which appeared in the Washington Post. So the publisher of the New York Times writes an op-ed in the Washington Post, means both institutions think this is really important and we're all behind it, in which he basically says Donald Trump is a threat to freedom of the press, just like Viktor Orban and Brazil and India. And but by the way, we're not political. We're not wading into politics here. But Donald Trump is a threat. I mean, this is classic New York Times. Oh, yes, we're neutral. No, you're not. Nobody in the world thinks you're neutral. You know, it's a little-known fact, John. The New York Times has not endorsed for president a Republican since Dwight Eisenhower in 1956. That means no matter what who the Democrats put on the ticket, going to get the New York Times support, which usually means the Washington Post, which has never endorsed a Republican for president. And it means herds of other media that follow along what they consider their bell cows.
But don't they realize
the New York Times.
Don't they realize that Kamala Harris is not qualified?
She's qualified by virtue of being a Democrat. I mean, any Democrat will do, and she will get their backing. Have you noticed they're not pushing her to release policy plans? They're not chasing the Tim Walz story. By the way, for our listeners, there's a wonderful editorial on the Tim Walz deceit over the years about his record and other things in the Las Vegas, Nevada Review Journal, I believe it's called. It's an editorial, and it told me things that I hadn't known about that. So I think the New York Times and its ilk are simply not to be trusted. And that column that Arthur Sulzberger wrote is really just another form of misinformation.
Understood. Well, we're out of time. Thank you, and keep fighting for America.
My pleasure, John, and I know you will too.
Breaking news, WABC.
And some breaking news here, John, on Katz and Cosby. Legendary actor James Earl Jones has died at the age of 93. Best known as the voice of Darth Vader, Field of Dreams, many Tony Awards, Emmy Awards, and a Grammy Award.
And he's going to be missed.
Yeah, what a great guy. And that voice was like the voice of God.
Way, later on, we have Craig McCarthy from the New York Post, and we're going to ask him. There's a rumor around that Eric Adams has COVID.
Yes, I saw that. Yep.
Let's go to break, and when we come back, the economy. Well, the market went up 500-600 points today. Up and down. Let's go. We'll spend 5 minutes on the economy from Adam Johnson, who's one smart guy. Let's go to break.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, we are back. Well, the economy, who knows? Where the heck are we? One of the smartest guys I know, he's on with Maria Bartiromo all the time, is Adam Johnson. And Adam.
John.
What is the truth? I mean, the market is up 500, down 900, up 500. Where the heck are we?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the market right now is wrestling with the elections. And I say that because the economy itself, while not perfect, is actually better than a lot of people think. I think the real problem is that we don't know who's going to win, and the choices facing all of us are very different. You know, Kamala Harris is going to run the country in a very different way than Donald Trump will run the country.
The question is,
that's what's in the market.
If you were CEO of a conglomerate, would you allow her to run one of your companies?
No, are you kidding me? Absolutely
not. Well, that's
not.
the answer I have to answer, because we have 7, 8, 9 divisions. Would I allow her to run one of my divisions? And the answer is absolutely not.
Well, and just think about what she wants to do with taxes, and that becomes it kills the whole thing right there. She wants to increase capital gains taxes from 20% to 45%. She wants to increase the corporate tax from 21 to 28. The craziest thing of all, John, she wants to, in theory, try to create a tax on unrealized gains. So think about it. If you're long Microsoft and it goes up in your account 30% in a given year and you feel great, you're going to have to pay a tax on it, even though you didn't sell it. It's crazy. But what's really interesting is she's starting to walk back some of those requests because she was getting so much pushback from Democratic donors who said, this is a non-starter. So I think she's getting an education, and I think that's one of the reasons why the market came back today. Even crazy Bernie Sanders said, well, she's learning to be a pragmatist. So, she's learning, but I agree with you. I certainly wouldn't put her near any of my companies.
Adam, it's Richard Weinberg. Good to talk to you again. Listen,
Likewise.
It's very simple. She'll say anything to get elected, and that's what they're telling her. Speak moderately and govern to the left, and that's what's going to happen. You can't trust her to carry this forward on a moderate policy. Look what Biden did, and he's less of a progressive than she is.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. I'm a former oil trader, so I love talking about oil, and I watch the oil markets very closely. One of the craziest things of all is that there are many, many interviews that she has given over the past 2 years where she said, quote, I want to ban all fracking. Right? That's part of the Green New Deal. Get rid of oil, all this cheap oil that we have. Well, then a funny thing happened on her way to Pennsylvania. She realized the home of shale oil drilling, which brings all that cheap natural gas to the surface, it's also home to...
And she needs the Pennsylvania vote.
Yes, 120,000 people in the state of Pennsylvania are employed in the oil and gas industry. So what did she say? She said, I said we need to ban fracking in the past. What I really mean is we need to ban irresponsible fracking. So she's changing her tune and trying to pivot to win votes. But I think people are seeing through it, and I think we're really going to all get a front row seat on just how shallow she is at the debate that comes up tomorrow night.
Any predictions on the debate tomorrow night? I mean, what I've said this morning on Sid's show, I said that she has 10 answers she's going to give. Regardless of what the question is, she's going to give those same 10 answers.
Yes, I think you're right. She's got her talking points because Obama wrote them down for her, and she's going to spend the next several months just regurgitating whatever it is she is told to say. And we'll see those 10 talking points tomorrow night. I think we're also going to try to see her be tough. She's going to try to show everyone that she was a prosecutor back in the day. So she'll try to be tough on Trump. What I hope we see in return is a former President Trump who is strong on the issues, but not personal with her. If he goes after her, if he tries to bully her, he's going to look like an angry man going after a woman, and I think it's over for him. So he's got to keep it in check. He's got to be on top of the issues, and he's got to keep it above board. Be tough, but don't get personal.
Agreed. Adam Johnson, thank you for coming on, and keep that wisdom going, and we'll catch up again real soon.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you,
always, John.
And Rita, we have going to the hot news of the day. Any good news? I mean, it's bad news about losing our friend, the actor.
Yeah, the James Earl Jones, but we got some other stuff.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
Well, it could be good news for the country. We'll see how the debate goes tomorrow night. Of course, former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris will debate each other. It's the pair's first debate, and it could be the only debate with the election now less than 2 months away. Also, a report says that NYPD Commissioner Edward Caban is expected to resign amid an ongoing FBI investigation that saw his home searched last week. We're going to be talking about that and a whole bunch more with Greg McCarthy of the New York Post. And also, an intense manhunt is now in its third day in rural Kentucky for the suspect in Saturday's shooting on the interstate. 5 people were seriously injured when the gunman opened fire along a stretch of the freeway. And those are the hot stories of the day.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
With us today is Senator Joni Ernst, and she just got back from Israel, and she has a lot of things to say, and she is a military expert. And my God, Joni, Senator, where do we start?
Oh, my gosh, John. So let me tell you, it was an interesting trip overseas. And what I can say, and you're right, I served in the military. I served as a company commander during Operation Iraqi Freedom. So the Middle East is very important to me. But went to Israel, met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, met with a number of our Arab partners and their leadership across the Middle East. And I actually had one Arab leader tell me that they have given up on the United States. And there is an extreme lack of leadership right now. And the world is on fire because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are not doing their job at keeping peace and stability. So it's extremely disappointing to hear that so many of our partners have just kind of thrown their hands up at expecting American leadership, because it was obvious there has been none over the course of the past 3.5 years. But what we see in Israel is really, really hard, because I've been working to free our American hostages. And, of course, we just saw the murder of Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who is one of the American hostages that Hamas has been holding in the Gaza Strip. And we've got to find a way to end the war in a way that's advantageous for Israel, for their peace, for their security, and get our American hostages home. It needs to happen now. But the Biden administration, they're just not leading, and Senator, unfortunately, we keep losing Americans.
Senator, I agree with you, but there's no rule of one thing. The thing that's bothered me: there's no rule of law in the United States of America. Number two, there's no leadership in the Far East or Mid East. And I tell my environmentalist friends, we can knock out the Houthis in the Red Sea, that they have the Red Sea closed, and we can't ship our oil, and we can knock them out in 3 days, and there's no leadership in the White House. I mean, I said to the environmentalist friends that tanker that's leaking has 4 times the oil of the Exxon Valdez. And where are the environmentalists? The women that are being abused in Afghanistan. Where are the women's rights groups? I don't understand it, Senator. You're a woman. You're a military person. What the heck is going on?
Oh, my gosh. So many great points right there, John. Yes. I mean, the women's rights issues across the Middle East, you don't hear women's groups here in the United States calling it out. And even after October 7th, where we actually had videotape of Israeli women being raped and abused and babies that were killed. I mean, there's actual video footage of all of this. And yet we have these women's groups that wouldn't decry what Hamas did. We have the United Nations Women's Council that wouldn't stand up for those Israeli women. And why? Because they're Jewish. They were Israelis. So the people on the left are very, very hypocritical, not standing up for women's rights. And when you talk about the women in Afghanistan, John, you are absolutely correct. Biden abandoned everything that we had fought for and worked for in developing rights for women, allowing them to go to school, allowing them to travel, openly without fear of being targeted by the Taliban. And all of that we've given up. Joe Biden abandoned them, said, the heck with you, we're leaving. So the world is on fire.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I don't.
Oil can come down $10 to $15 a barrel if the Red Sea was open. I mean, I don't understand it. There's no common sense.
Well, John, that's part of the plan, though. Don't you think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want the cost of oil to go up? Because they have this green fantasy about everyone in the United States is going to drive an electric car.
But electric cars
and we
don't
know
work.
That's not true.
Electric
right,
cars
it's
don't
not
work.
True.
It should be
It'll
an option.
Never work.
It should be an option.
It'll never.
If I want to drive an electric car, it should be an option.
Yep, consumer choice. I'm all about it.
Yes.
But the fact that they just want to cut it off, so I don't think they personally are concerned about the cost of oil out there. But most Americans, and John, a lot of folks in New York City, they rely on cabs that have an internal combustion engine or other means of transportation. People in Iowa most certainly rely on oil and gasoline to get them from point A to point B. But President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, they really don't care.
Yep. Well, Senator, thank you for coming on today, and God bless America. We have to help make sure our country survives, because right now, I think we're at the edge. I'm going to tell you one more thing, Senator, before we hang up.
Mm-hmm.
The other day, I was watching a PBS thing on the fall of Constantinople, which was the largest city in the Byzantine Empire. Well, I don't know if Americans realize it, but we're going to be close to that.
We're teetering on the brink, John,
yes.
And God bless you for all you do and educating all of your listeners. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Senator, and we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good.
Breaking news, WABC.
And some more breaking news here on Katz and Cosby. Ed Kranepool, of course, the Mets legend who won the 1969 World Series, considered one of the best first basemen ever, has just passed away, dead at the age of 79. And of course, John,
very sad.
We met him.
Sad.
I remember he was there at the Ferry Hawks a number of times when he was there with Margot when she threw out the first pitch in Coney Island. So that was really, really special,
very
John.
Sad.
Yeah, really special.
Who do we have now?
And joining us now, we have Craig McCarthy. He is City Hall Bureau Chief for the New York Post. And Craig, boy, lots of big breaking news. Fill us in, if you could, on the very latest.
Well, the very latest today is the police commissioner is facing increasing calls for him to resign. But he came back from Florida this morning. He told people in his office that he's not planning on resigning right now. So we're just waiting to see what the next step is going to be with this. And this comes just a few days, 5 days after federal agents raided the homes of multiple top NYPD officials, along with the first deputy mayor, Sheena Wright, who is married to the school's chancellor, David Banks, as well as the public safety deputy mayor. Thanks.
And there's a rumor going around that Mayor Adams has COVID?
Well, Mayor Adams does have COVID, yes. That is confirmed. City Hall confirmed it today. He was not feeling well, apparently, and they took a COVID test after his afternoon appearance out in Queens, and he tested positive for COVID. So he is holding up inside Gracie Mansion, where he is going to be working remotely for the next, I guess the latest CDC guidelines are 5 days.
Wow. All right. Well, Craig, keep us posted on all fronts. Obviously, so many moving parts. The whole country's watching. And Craig McCarthy, thank you very much. City Hall Bureau Chief there with the New York Post. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And John, we got Bill O'Reilly coming on deck. He's got some interesting stuff, especially about the big debate. Wait till you hear what Bill O'Reilly has to say right after the break here on Katz and Cosby.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Joining us now is the mega nonfiction bestselling author. By the way, he's got a brand new book, which is coming out tomorrow, appropriately called Confronting the Presidents. And joining us now is the great Bill O'Reilly. Bill, by the way, I want to tell everybody, we have our great debate coverage here on WABC Radio. You can listen also WABCradio.com around the world. We are going to have the best coverage ever. I know you're going to be a part of it. Myself, Ed, the judge, also, of course, John Katz, 8:30 to midnight tomorrow night. I can't wait, Bill.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to do the pre-show. The post-show will take care of itself. Everybody will have seen it and heard it, and then those of us in the media can add our opinion and then layer it out. But the pre-show I'm reading right now, read a very interesting report about Afghanistan. And people go, oh, it happened a long time ago. Why are you harping on that, O'Reilly? And the reason is it gives you a window into what's going to happen tomorrow night. So Kamala Harris's campaign has basically said the chaotic withdrawal of the United States from Afghanistan that led to 13 service members being killed at the airport and hundreds of others being killed and wounded was Trump's fault. It was Trump's fault because he made a bad deal with the Taliban. Now, if you'll remember, the deal was that the Taliban would not attack American forces inside Afghanistan for 18 months, and that held. That was the deal that Trump made, and that the government of the United States would then engineer a coordinated withdrawal from that country so there would be free elections. Well, the Taliban was never going to have free elections. That's true. But there wasn't any attack on U.S. servicemen for 18 months under Donald Trump's presidency. But the key point here for tomorrow night's debate is that whatever the issue, whether it be inflation, Afghanistan, open border, social chaos, is going to be Trump's fault. Harris is going to blame every single thing on Trump. Oh, no. Trump did the border. We wanted comprehensive immigration reform. It was him. He did it. Oh, inflation, no. After COVID, it was Trump that did that. Even though he left with 1.4%, he lighted the fuse, and then we walked in, and that was it. We didn't have anything to do with it.
Hey, Bill,
that's what you will hear tomorrow night.
People are believing lies. I mean, I can't believe the amount of lies they're telling, and people are believing it.
Some people. There are
too many
people in the world. The people who live in the world as it is, and the people who believe what they want to believe. And facts don't matter to those people. We all know them. I mean, you might be married to one of them. You might have a son or daughter like that. They believe what they want to believe. For whatever emotional reason, you can't present any evidence that they will accept. And the Harris campaign knows that the media will not challenge all of this nonsense. So they can basically get away with it. So the ABC News moderators tomorrow night, they're not going to jump down Kamala Harris and say, no, that's absurd. It was Joe Biden who booted that exit from Afghanistan. You can't pin it on a president who was out of office. That's insane. They're not going to do that. They're going to allow Kamala Harris to blame every single malady in the United States on Trump.
So, Bill, in your column on BillO'Reilly.com, and I'm a fan of it, as I am a fan of yours, you wrote sort of the tactic that Trump needs to take, which I thought was really interesting, sort of laying out the facts.
Donald Trump read the column because his people are quoting it today. So it's very clear. No matter what Donald Trump is asked, he is polite, first of all, not snarling. Okay? He's polite. But he says, I'll answer that question in a moment. But before I do, I just want to tell the audience around the world watching us right now that I am very uneasy as an American citizen standing on the stage. I don't understand why 10 million foreign nationals are in this country without documentation. I don't understand why the cost of living essentials has risen 20%. And both of those things happened on the Biden-Harris administration. I hope you guys are going to ask the vice president about that. Now, that's all he has to do, Rita. That's all he has to do. And that'll put her on the defensive and the moderators on the defensive. And what does that take, 30 seconds?
I agree. Now, how do you think the muted microphones...
I hope he follows your advice, Bill O'Reilly.
I do, too. How do you think...
It's not so much... I just want the WABC listenership to know. It's not that I'm advising the Trump campaign. I'm not. I'm worried about the country. I mean, you guys talked about that earlier in this hour.
You heard about PBS and the fall of Constantinople.
absolutely. I'm worried about this country. And I understand both of these candidates, both of them. And one of the candidates fails to control himself on too many occasions. That would be Mr. Trump. And the other candidate is totally devoid of any problem-solving skills at all. I don't even think the vice president understands the problem. But a better column that I wrote, Rita, and I hope you get a chance to read it, is my on BillO'Reilly.com, is entitled The Kamala Mystery.
Yeah, the Warren Harding. Explain. I love that.
Warren Harding. Okay, you say the word Warren Harding and people faint. Okay, they don't know who it is. Is that a rapper? Warren Harding. I don't know. I think he's a rapper.
By the way, that would be a good name for a rapper. Ed Cox agrees.
He got elected president in 1920. This guy. During the campaign, his mistress gave birth to his daughter. Nobody reported it. He didn't campaign. He sat on his porch in Marion, Ohio, and once in a while a reporter would come up and ask him a question and he'd smile and answer. He didn't even campaign.
And they said about
fed up with Woodrow Wilson and the Democrats after 8 years of that chaos. Okay, they voted for Harding overwhelmingly. And the Kamala Harris strategy is taken exactly from Warren Harding. Okay, and this was one of the worst presidents this country has ever seen, which is the beauty of my book, Confronting the Presidents, because we run them down, the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right? And you're going to say every page, you're going to go, what? What? A presidential candidate as a mistress who gives birth and the press doesn't report it? Yes, that happened in 1920. And where do you see how the guy governed? So I'm afraid that if Kamala Harris wins, she is just going to be a puppet of these progressive people who ran Joe Biden, because she has not demonstrated any skill at all about confronting a problem. She wants joy. And this is the best. Kamala Harris's campaign ads go, we need a new way forward. Well, what was wrong with the Biden way? Why do we need a new way? If Joe is so good that you've said 1,000 times with a great president, why do we need a new way? Does that strike you as an obvious question?
Yeah, she's hoping Americans have amnesia. Ed Cox, you have a question for Bill O'Reilly?
Bill, your analogy of Warren Harding to Kamala Harris, their speeches are the same as said about Warren Harding, that his speeches were an army of words walking across the landscape in search of an idea. And that's just about what her salad speeches are.
At one time, Ed, Harding read a speech that he had not written. Of course, he didn't write any speech. He was too busy playing poker and getting drunk, which is what Warren Harding did every night in the White House. Okay? So he reads the speech, and then he goes at the end of it, I didn't write that, and I don't even believe it. I mean, this is how crazy it is. And the reason that I wrote this book, and Trump is in the book, and Biden's in the book, I mean, they're at the end, and now I'm getting feedback because some people got an advanced copy of this book, is to illuminate the danger of electing people who just simply cannot do the job. I had a guy the other day say, well, what about Trump? And I said, he's got 4 years. He ran the country for 4 years. Did you feel you were in jeopardy? Did you feel that the economy was crashing or that there was going to be World War III? But see, the Democrats and the media have obliterated those 4 years, and Trump has not illuminated them, which he could do tomorrow night.
Yeah, and that's the key. You know what's interesting, Bill? You said you heard the top of the show, and we played the phone ringing, the 3 a.m. call. Because I sadly, Bill, I mean, you look at the world is on fire right now. I mean, you look at what's going on in the Mideast. You look at the open borders. You look at Russia, Ukraine, what China's doing, Iran selling missiles to Russia. I mean, there's so many things going on right now. that it really is important. You really do want to have somebody every time, but especially I almost feel like right now in modern times.
You want to have a person in the White House, and I absolutely understand why many Americans don't want to vote for Donald Trump. They just simply don't like his demeanor. I got it. But some of the greatest presidents that we've ever had have been really not the kind of people you want to have dinner with. And sometimes you need a hard person in there who is really focused on a certain problem. And the truth of the matter is, when Trump was in office, and this is why I'll cast a vote for him, the economy and real wages were strong, and there was calm relatively overseas. The exact opposite happened when Biden took office, and it'll get worse under Kamala.
Yeah, I mean, it is a mess, and you're right. It's not a personality contest. It shouldn't be.
I would not trust Kamala Harris to make the right decision if that phone rang at 3 o'clock in the morning.
She wouldn't answer it, John. Okay? Kamala Harris is going to be somebody who is a front person. She will have no say in really what happens. It is apparent to me, and all you have to do is look at her Senate record. 4 years, 0 accomplishments, nothing.
Yeah, that's a frightening premise. Boy, oh boy, for the world. Well, Bill O'Reilly, we so appreciate you being here. We can't wait to have you join us also with our special coverage again tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. to midnight. It's going to be the best ever with Bill O'Reilly, and great perspective, Bill. And everybody check out BillO'Reilly.com. And also your new awesome book, Confronting the Presidents, coming out perfectly timed for tomorrow, Bill. Thank you so much,
Thank you, Bill O'Reilly, and I'll be listening tonight at 9.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill, so much. Boy, and what do we all stand for, John, after this?
Truth,
justice, and the American way.
God bless America.